In less than 3 years, the world's most coveted watches went from breaking auction records to facing 11 straight quarters of sliding prices and rising dealer stockpiles. Only 26% of people now wear traditional watches, while the industry's playbook, artificial scarcity, and sky-high prices has backfired. How did luxury watches go from safe assets to losing cultural relevance? And what did the industry see coming that most buyers missed? In the first months after global lockdowns, a tidal wave of money rushed into luxury watches. With travel off limits and restaurants shuttered, discretionary spending shifted almost overnight. Suddenly, the world's most sought-after timepieces became the new objects of desire, and the numbers were staggering. In 2021, a stainless steel Patek Philippe Nautilus, reference 5711, hammered for over $6.5 million at a Phillips auction, more than 100 times its original retail price. Bidding wars erupted in Geneva, Hong Kong, and New York, as international collectors and flippers chased the same few models. On the secondary market, watches that once sat in display cases for months now vanished within hours. The frenzy did not stop at auctions. Across Europe and the United States, authorized dealers kept velvet ropes in place, but the real action happened online. Platforms like Chrono24 and Watchbox saw listings for Rolex Submariners and Daytonas climb to $30,000, $40,000, even $50,000, 2 or 3 times their sticker prices. Waiting lists for entry-level models stretched into years. For many, the only way to get a new Rolex or Patek was to pay a premium, often in cash, to a gray market dealer or a secondary market website. This was not just about scarcity. The pandemic had left millions with extra savings. In the United States alone, household savings jumped by more than $2 trillion between 2020 and 2021. With nowhere else to spend, luxury watches became a way to turn cash into something tangible, portable, and at least for a time, profitable. Investment forums and social media buzzed with stories of flippers doubling their money in weeks. For a brief moment, it seemed every stainless steel sports watch was a golden ticket. But even as the headlines celebrated record sales and jaw-dropping prices, there were hints of excess. Dealers quietly warned of buyers who never planned to wear their watches, only to resell. Auction houses fielded calls from first-time bidders who had never set foot in a boutique. The sense of urgency was fueled by a belief that prices could only go up. In hindsight, these were the unmistakable signs of a market pushed beyond its natural limits, a boom powered by cash, hype, and the promise of easy gains. Dealer allocation systems became the industry's secret weapon. Instead of flooding stores with new stock, brands like Rolex and Patek Philippe tightly controlled deliveries, sending only a handful of the most desirable models to each authorized dealer. These shipments arrived with no set schedule and in quantities far below demand, turning everyday stainless steel watches into objects of myth. A Rolex Submariner with a retail price of around $10,000 might never see the display case. Instead, it went straight into the safe, reserved for the best clients or those willing to spend years cultivating a relationship with the boutique. For everyone else, the waitlist stretched on, sometimes for years, sometimes with no promise at all. This was not accidental. Allocation was not just about matching supply to demand. It was a deliberate strategy to create the illusion of rarity, even when production numbers quietly rose year after year. The result was a market where scarcity was manufactured, not organic. Dealers became gatekeepers, wielding the power to decide who would get access to a new GMT Master II or Daytona. The story spread quickly, buyers told to purchase jewelry or less popular models to move up the list, or asked to prove their loyalty by spending tens of thousands of dollars before qualifying for a shot at a steel sports watch. On the secondary market, these tactics sent prices soaring. A Submariner that cost $10,000 at retail might command $25,000 or more online. The GMT Master 2, with a list price around $11,000, routinely sold for double or triple that amount on platforms like Chrono24 and Watchbox. For flippers and speculators, the allocation system was a gold mine. For genuine collectors and first-time buyers, it became a source of frustration and fatigue. The manufactured scarcity playbook did not just inflate prices, it reshaped the entire culture around luxury watches. Getting a Rolex was no longer about walking into a store with cash in hand. It was about playing the game, navigating opaque rules, and accepting that access itself had become the ultimate luxury. As the hype cycle reached its peak, the very mechanisms designed to fuel desire began to sow the seeds of exhaustion. By the end of 2024, the numbers told a different story. The luxury watch market had entered its 11th straight quarter of falling prices. Chrono24 and Watch Charts, two of the industry's most watched indices, charted a steady slide for models that once seemed untouchable. Rolex was down 5% in the secondary market for the year. Patek Philippe was off by 4%. Audemars Piguet was slipping by 7.5%. Even the flagship Royal Oak, a symbol of collector status, lost ground. For Vacheron Constantin, the correction was even sharper, an 11% drop in just 12 months. Inside authorized dealerships, the mood had shifted from triumph to tension, where once a single delivery of a steel sports watch would spark a flurry of calls and quiet deals, now there were too many watches and not enough buyers. Dealers in New York and London spoke of back rooms filling up with unsold inventory, mid-tier models, two-tone chronographs, precious metal dress watches. The pieces that once moved slowly now seemed to have stopped altogether. In some boutiques, the safe was no longer just for the most coveted references. It was a holding pen for stock that would not budge. The pressure was building from all sides. Brands continued to ship, expecting the boom to last, but the secondary market was flooded. On Chrono24, listings for watches like the Omega Seamaster and Tag Heuer Carrera multiplied, with sellers forced to cut prices week after week. Dealers, once the gatekeepers of exclusivity, now faced the risk of margin calls and inventory write-downs. The old playbook of allocation games and velvet rope scarcity was backfiring. Instead of fueling desire, it bred skepticism. The idea that a luxury watch was a safe asset had fractured. Buyers who paid peak prices in 2022 found themselves underwater, their investments eroding with each new market update. For the first time in years, the balance of power was shifting away from the brands and their authorized dealers. A first-time buyer stands at the counter of an authorized dealer, clutching a list of references, but the answer is always the same. Nothing available, no timeline, no guarantee. After months, sometimes years of waiting, many simply give up. Stories circulate of would-be customers walking away, opting for a smartwatch, or spending their money elsewhere. The emotional toll is visible in online forums and in the quiet resignation of buyers who once dreamed of joining the club. For the dealers themselves, the pressure cuts both ways. The old velvet rope tactics that once built anticipation now breed resentment. Frustration spills over as loyal clients are told to buy jewelry or less popular models just to stay in good standing. Some buyers, after being asked to spend tens of thousands on accessories, never return. The relationship game has become a burden, not a privilege. Behind the boutique doors, the supply chain is straining. In 2025, 71% of watch component manufacturers reported cutting back on investments. 65% have moved to partial unemployment, a clear sign that the industry's support structure is under stress. These numbers reflect more than just a dip in demand. They signal a system stretched to its breaking point. Authorized dealers, once envied for their access, now face unsold inventory and shrinking margins. The allocation model that fueled the frenzy is backfiring, pushing away the very customers it was meant to attract. As buyers pivot to alternatives, the industry's carefully constructed aura of exclusivity is wearing thin. The fallout is not just financial, it's personal, as trust erodes and patience runs out. A decade ago, nearly half of watch owners wore a traditional timepiece on their wrist. Today, that number has dropped to just 26%. The latest Deloitte Swiss watch industry survey draws a clear line. Mechanical watches are no longer the default for daily wear. Smartwatches have claimed that spot, especially among younger buyers. In 2020, 46% of respondents reported wearing a traditional watch. By 2025, less than a third do. This is not a gentle drift. It is a rapid migration. The numbers are even starker among Millennials and Gen Z. For them, a watch is less about status and more about function, health, and personal style. When asked what they actually wear every day, smartwatches outpace mechanicals, driven by features like heart rate tracking, notifications, and easy customization. For many, the idea of waiting years for a steel sports model or paying a premium for a dress watch that spends most days in a drawer just does not add up. A 29-year-old buyer in London summed it up in a recent interview, saying their Apple Watch does everything they need and they can change the band to match their outfit. They still love the look of a classic watch, but it is not worth the hassle. The data backs this up. Even though more than half of consumers say they are interested in buying a mechanical or quartz watch in the future, their actual behavior tells another story. The gap between what people say and what they do has never been wider. The numbers do not just reflect changing tastes, they reveal a fundamental realignment in how the next generation values time on their wrist. A smartwatch on the wrist is not just a digital watch, it is a daily companion. For younger buyers, the appeal is obvious. Health tracking comes built in, with step counts, heart rate, blood oxygen, and even ECG readings at the tap of a finger. Notifications arrive instantly, from texts and calls to calendar alerts and payment confirmations. You can change the look in seconds, swapping bands or faces to match a workout, a meeting, or a night out. Updates and new features roll out every few months, keeping the device fresh long after the first unboxing. These are not just gadgets, they are tools that fit seamlessly into the rhythms of modern life. A morning run is logged automatically. Commutes become more efficient with transit alerts on the wrist. For many, leaving the phone in a pocket or bag is now possible, since calls and messages can be answered with a swipe. Contactless payments, boarding passes, and even hotel keys are handled without reaching for a wallet. For Millennials and Generation Z, this level of functionality is expected, not a luxury. The idea of waiting years for a mechanical watch that cannot track sleep or send a message feels out of step. Smartwatches adapt to changing needs and styles, while a mechanical watch is locked into a single purpose. As a result, mechanical watches have faded from daily wear, becoming special occasion accessories rather than everyday essentials. The practical advantages of smartwatches are not just replacing tradition, they are redefining what people want from something they wear every day. Audemars Piguet's numbers paint a stark picture. In July 2025, flagship Royal Oak prices on the secondary market had slipped another 3% year over year, but the story beneath the surface was even bleaker. Models like the Royal Oak Offshore and Code 11.59 posted losses of over 9% in the same period, with the broader Audemars Piguet lineup facing double-digit declines for the first time since the financial crisis. Vacheron Constantin, a pillar of Swiss heritage, saw its market index collapse by more than 11% year over year, one of the sharpest corrections among major brands. For secondary market traders, the mood has shifted from bullish to defensive. One experienced dealer describes the new reality. Every week, I am fielding calls from collectors looking to offload pieces they thought would hold value. There is no longer a floor under the market. While some brands are still moving inventory, others are stuck. The difference is no longer just about hype, it is about resilience. Audemars Piguet and Vacheron Constantin are struggling to find buyers, even at a discount. The urgency is palpable. Secondary market traders now focus more on risk management than chasing the next hot release, and the prospect of further price drops has made even seasoned collectors cautious. The industry can no longer count on blanket demand to bail it out. Omega and Breitling have taken a different route. Instead of leaning on artificial scarcity or endless wait lists, they have built out clear value ladders, offering everything from accessible quartz models to high-spec mechanical pieces. This approach gives new buyers a way in, without the gatekeeping. Omega's Seamaster and Breitling's Super Ocean lines, for example, have become favorites for younger collectors looking for daily wear, not just status. Their transparency on pricing and availability stands in sharp contrast to the frustration found at many authorized dealers. But adaptation is not just about product. In August 2025, a 39% U.S. tariff on Swiss watches forced brands to make tough choices. Patek Philippe responded with a 15% price hike in the United States, while others, like Omega, focused on holding the line and communicating value. LVMH, the parent company behind Tag Heuer and Hublot, managed to post 1% growth in its watches and jewelry division during the first quarter of 2025, even as most luxury categories shrank. A former brand strategist describes 3 levers that matter now: honest pricing, modern design, and real innovation. Brands that move on these fronts have a shot at survival. Those that stick to the old playbook, scarcity, opacity, and relentless price hikes, risk being left behind as the market recalibrates. Today, mechanical watches face a world where 74% of consumers have chosen something else for their wrists. As digital life accelerates, heritage alone no longer guarantees relevance. The next chapter won't be written by tradition, but by those who adapt to what time means now. The value of a watch is changing, and so is the meaning of luxury. What does your wrist say about you today?